What's up guys, Asian here with another video, and today we're going to be going over the Update 26 comment preview post that was made on the ESO official forums, I believe about an hour ago now. So this is a post made by Brian Wheeler, who is the head of the combat lead development team, essentially, over at for Elder Scrolls Online. And so he's giving us a little bit of a preview for what they're doing in Update 26, which is the Greymoor PTS. The Greymoor PTS is coming out on Monday, so that is the Monday after this weekend, in other words, 3 days from today. Unlike previous chapters, there will not be an NDA, so you're able to talk about pretty much everything that you find on the PTS, although they do discourage you from kind of leaking or spoiling any of the main Greymoor quest lines. So while you can't talk about it, they do recommend that you try not spoiling it if you can, for people who cannot access the PTS, console players, for example. And there is no invitation. I believe they said that it is everybody, as long as you have the PTS installed, will be able to participate in the Greymoor PTS. So that's going to be coming out on Monday. So we'll be discussing the full patch notes on Monday, and much like elsewhere, this is going to be a very, very large PTS patch note because it is a new chapter, so I will be breaking up into a couple of sections, so expect multiple videos to come out on Monday, each of them sort of hyper-focused in on a specific section of the patch notes. How exactly I'm going to break them up is really going to have to wait until I read the full patch notes, so I won't know exactly what the sections are going to be titled until Monday when I'm actually recording the videos. But anyway, here is the combat preview for Update 26. So, they do want to reiterate that they did experiment with those changes to light attacks and heavy attacks that we talked about over the last 2 weeks. Those changes are not going to be in this update. They are going to be trying to find some other way of adjusting light attacks and heavy attacks, but that is not going to be for Update 26. There is no current ETA on when they are revisiting the light and heavy attack sort of rebalance, so to speak. So Update 26 is a big emphasis on vampire updates, but the werewolf updates are also going to be in this patch. So if you guys might recall, about 2 weeks ago, I did release screenshots of updated werewolf abilities, and this basically confirms that the tooltips that we saw are going to be on the Greymoor PTS. Not necessarily the exact values or the exact effects, but you can see updates to the werewolf line here. So they basically said that they wanted to keep the, quote, in-your-face action of the werewolf, and also wanted to add rotation options when you're transformed. They gave an example of Pounce now having a follow-up attack, which we saw 2 weeks ago when we got the Greymoor sneak peek, and also making adjustments to allow buffing and debuffing to give a sense of being a pack leader. Sustain for werewolves is also something we noted needs an adjustment. Not so for PvE, because werewolves in PvE just do light attack builds, so they're probably talking more about PvP instead. So they are kind of emphasizing here that the changes that we saw in the Greymoor sneak peek, they are going to be making it onto the PTS. So then to talk about standardization, and that they are going to continue with the standardization. So they do mention that standards aren't written in stone, but they do now have equal measures of power and performance from these two-piece sets for monster helms. So some of the monster helm sets will have the one piece adjusted to better suit the functionality of that set. So they give Valkyn Skoria as an example, which now gives spell pen as the one piece rather than max health, since it's a damage-oriented set. This is a good change for Skoria. Spell Pen is still going to be better off than max health as a set bonus. For PvE, it's a very, very, it's like one of the worst. I don't want to say the worst, but it's definitely not a great armor set bonus you want to have for PvE. For PvP, Skoria just makes it a little bit stronger, I think, with the extra spell pen that you're getting. So for PvP, this is going to be a small buff, I'd imagine. For PvE, this is also going to be a small buff, but depending on whether they actually change the two-piece I don't really see Valkyn Skoria being all that useful. So right now you're getting to the pen cap by putting in 9 to 11 points into spell erosion, maybe a little bit more depending on whether you're accounting for debuff, downtime, things like that. So while the spell pen will allow you to take those points out of spell erosion and put them elsewhere, you're only talking about changing like 1 or 2 percentage points out of a single CP passive. So ultimately it's not really going to increase the DPS all too much unless they also happen to buff the 2-piece effect as well. Other sets are also receiving functionality adjustments. They mention damage values, trigger conditions, cooldowns, etc. And they give the example of Tremor Scale. So they are removing the snare from Tremor Scale and they're instead introducing a physical resistance reduction. They don't say whether it is major or minor fracture or if it's a unique debuff. We're assuming at this point it is going to be a unique debuff. So that's just one example of a change in their functionality. So Tremor Scale won't snare, and instead they'll have hopefully a unique physical resistance debuff. And then they also mentioned that to help with performance, some sets are having their chance to proc removed and instead have a cooldown. So they give Tremor Scale again. Tremor Scale has a 50% chance to proc currently, and so they're removing that chance to proc and instead increasing the cooldown instead. So because they are changing the cooldown, they're also increasing the damage to sort of make up for the fact that they are basically making this a guaranteed proc chance and increasing the cooldown there. So this is probably just to help with server performance mainly, so the server doesn't have to do as many calculations, because chance to proc means you have to do some sort of pseudo RNG, I'd imagine, on the server side of things. So that just helps reduce the amount of workload that the server has to do, maybe in like PvP scenarios or big scenarios where you have a lot of different chances to proc sets going. So this could mean that sets like Zon might be changing, because Zon is another proc chance. Grothdar, Selene's, these are all chance to proc. They don't really say whether or not they are going to be covering all these proc sets. There are a lot of proc sets out there, but it is a fairly good chance that they are probably going to try to focus in on standardizing monster helms. So Zon, they might change it so it's no longer a proc set. It said it's a guarantee. They just increase the damage and increase the cooldown. So we'll see exactly how all these changes to proc sets work. For PvE, the main proc sets are these monster helm sets, so we're really going to be focusing in on if they change these standard monster helm sets that you typically see DPS running. Continuing on with itemization, they are introducing perfected veteran Maelstrom and perfected Dragonstar Arena weapons. So is a long-standing request by players. It is. We have long requested some sort of additional benefits, I should say, or if you want to call it that, for running Maelstrom or Dragonstar. And finally, bring these two arenas up to par with others that add perfected versions. These are earned by completing Veteran on each of these arenas and will have additional bonuses, much like other perfected sets. So right now, the main difference between non-perfect and perfect versions of sets is that perfect versions of sets will have one additional armor bonus. So if we use an example like perfected Reliquin, the non-perfect Reliquin has, I believe it is crit, minor slayer, weapon damage, and then the Reliquin bonus on the 5-piece. The perfect version of Reliquin has crit, minor slayer, that weapon damage on the 4-piece, the unique Reliquin bonus on the 5-piece, and an additional max stamina bonus on that 5-piece. So perfect versions of sets just adds one additional armor bonus line. Like Kestis adds weapon crits, Roria adds max magicka, and so on and so forth. With the arena sets, so if we take a look at the Black Rose Prison arena sets, same thing. The perfect version adds one additional armor set bonus. So for example, the Black Rose Prison Destruction Staff, non-perfect version just has the unique Destruction Staff effect that affects Impulse, but the perfect version also adds a 1-piece armor bonus of Spell Pen. So that's probably what we're going to see here. The set effects probably aren't going to change, it's just going to be adding in that additional 1-piece bonus there. So for those of you guys who've been playing for a long time, you will recall that Maelstrom staves and Maelstrom and Dragonstar arena weapons, they did used to have that 1-piece bonus there. So I believe, for example, the Maelstrom staff, the Destruction staff, so Inferno, Shock, and Frost Staves, they all had a 1-piece spell damage bonus, and then that was changed about, I want to say it was about 2 years ago, maybe a little bit earlier than that, where they got rid of that because they felt that it was overpowered for the sets. So now they're just basically probably just reintroducing the spell damage bonus on these perfected sets here. So basically doing a 180 after about 2 years or so of removing them. So completing Maelstrom and Dragonstar arenas will now grant blue versions of the non-perfect weapons from these arenas on normal. In this patch, we're making a few adjustments to all arena weapons to meet standards. To give an example of the Black Rose Prison weapon set Spectral Cloak, which is the dual wield set. This now increases damage done and reduces damage taken whenever you deal damage with Blade Cloak, rather than granting major protection. This fits the concept of Blade Cloak as it deals damage as well as protection. So they may be changing things like the Maelstrom Destruction Staff, the Dragonstar Arena Restoration Staff, the Spectral Cloak change that they detailed here. I'm not sure if this is going to make BRP dual wield the meta for stamina DPS. Probably not. It really depends on the exact values, but I don't really see it being used. It basically would have to do more damage than a Maj to Helm set, which is a possibility. They are fairly strong sets, but it still has quite a high bar to beat because it has to beat out Marslock DPS. Finally, they are making small adjustments to crit resistance and healing, affecting PvP specifically. They've seen healing becoming quite volatile in PvP, with the ability to negate a high amount of damage in just one ability cast for many players at once. This isn't just one ability that causes this type of health bar swinging, so we are making adjustments to Battle Spirit, which now reduces healing taken by 60% rather than 50%. Then to talk about critical resistance as well, the main issue regarding itemization in PvP because you have to build for crit resistance. That means other popular traits and builds aren't as viable unless you're Glass Cannon or a top-end player. To bring more viable stat and set combinations into PvP play, we are now granting a baseline crit resistance. In conjunction with that change, we are making several adjustments to item sets which grant crit resistance. We're also making changes to the Impen trait by reducing the value. So basically, everybody gets crit resistance, some level of crit resistance, and they are basically nerfing Impen, and they're making adjustments to sets that grant crit resistance. I know there are a few, but I can't really remember them off the top of my head. So don't PvP enough to really know whether this is going to be a big change or not. PvPers, you guys can comment on that change here. But that is pretty much everything for this video. So again, quite a few changes here coming in with combat for update 26. Gina did note that the current patch notes is 50 pages long. Now, we don't know if that's 50 pages as in forum posts or 50 pages long as in this is the length of it in Notepad, but it's still going to be a fairly lengthy patch notes to kind of go over on Monday. But that's it for this video. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. There's a link in the comment section below to this forum thread if you guys want to give your own feedback or make comments on what has been said here. Hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you guys in the next dungeon.